I can't tell you what a pleasure it is. I'm going to see if I can find a middle spot here. What is that? Oh, that would
Or if
be
you
great.
can't, go to the right. Always go to the right.
This is far enough, huh? Well, it's just a pleasure to have the opportunity to be with each and every one of you this morning. And I, of course, am delighted to see familiar faces. That's really nice, whether from Dorchester or from prior events right here in Salem. But there is one new face in the group, and it's the gentleman here at the back with very warm hands that I found out when we shook hands. Jeff is from the Democrat Party, correct?
Yes.
And I understand that he will be seeing me a great deal and that he is going to be following me. So I thought that was interesting and thought that you might find that interesting, as did I. And I've noticed that and I think there's a kind of a message for Republicans that we often talk about, but it's kind of interesting to see it firsthand. I've noticed, and I shared this with Jan a moment ago, that the entity that spends an awful lot of time on my own webpage is the Democrat National Party. And it's interesting to me that that is done. And so there is full access to information there as to what we stand for. And so I just wanted to mention that since I'm just getting to meet Jeff now. Fred and I have now had the opportunity to see and talk with each other several times, and I just want to say one thing about Fred, and that'll be all that I mention you this morning, Fred. But the day that he filed for office was a day that we were speaking here in Salem, and at that time, Fred and I shook hands and said that there would be no circumstances under which there would be any digs, there would be no daggers that he or I would give behind the back of the other. And I appreciate that because there are many elections right now that are not that way. And I don't know if you have any of the type of election going on in this county that is quite as lively as one that is going on in Clackamas right now, where it is not that way. And there, as soon as the other person is not in sight, there are a lot of daggers going around. And I don't think that does the Republican Party or any other party any good. So I appreciate very much the manner in which we determined that we would go forward in this campaign. Well, Jan, thank you for sharing quite a bit of my background there. And I'll add just a little bit to that in that I always say that I come to you as a balanced candidate in that I have one daughter who graduated from OSU and another in law school at the University of Oregon, a son who retired from Intel. He said, I want a virtual job somewhere, and so that he said, it's got to be in Bend, Oregon. And so he then went there, was there for many years, and then subsequently retired. And then another daughter, we've got the 4 kids. My husband, Earl, of 34 years, back there. He's put up with me for that long, for which I admire him greatly. But at any rate, our 4th daughter is out in Boston. And she was, we go where the jobs are, right? And she was able to find just the job of her dreams out there. So that's where she is now, and just really enjoying what she's doing. And her hope is to come back to the West Coast and be relocated by McKinsey & Company, the consulting group, as soon as that is in the offing, but it isn't right now. At any rate, I was indeed born in Kansas, and because of how I was brought up, I think I was brought up as a fiscal conservative. My mother, by default, had to be. She was a very conservative woman. I remember that I started working at the age of probably, I guess, about 14 or so. At 15, I paid Social Security for the first time. And so Social Security is indeed something that I consider an investment. I think about that work, when I was just 15, running away from high school as soon as I could at the end of the classes that day, or at the end of whatever extracurricular activities that I was doing in order to get that day's work done before going home and preparing dinner before my mom got home. I remember working to take my first, I've forgotten now how many paychecks, maybe 5 or 6, and making my mother's next to last house payment. So I was born in order to be, I guess you would say, a bred fiscal conservative by virtue of how I was raised. I worked for Kansas Farmer magazine, and I remember interviewing some of the people that we would have stories on, and I remember typing up the magazine copy with 6 carbons. You remember carbon paper? And I would type so hard through all of those papers in order to get it on all of those carbons that to this day I just beat up the keyboard on my computer. It's just pathetic. There, you look at it and there's no letters. I don't look at it, but if you do, you can see that there's no letters there because I'm still typing away like that as if, you know, creature of habit, that there was all that carbon paper in there. But at any rate, that's the nature of my my upbringing. And then I went to undergraduate school in Kansas, and then went to graduate school, first at Kansas University in speech communications, and then I went and became a Texas Aggie. And that has been, although you can still hear my accent a little bit there, because I got that report just a bit ago, I tried my best to get rid of it because, as I was telling you, our daughter, who was quite young at that time, retained her accent until she got a boyfriend out here on the West Coast. And then she just dropped that accent, but it was just so cute when she was doing it when we first got out this direction. But at any rate, I've enjoyed that Aggie connection. It's a unique institution, and engenders the support and loyalty of its alumni in a most interesting way because of the strong, positive culture that is there. Are any of you Aggies by any chance? No? There's a positive culture that is most unique, and as a consequence of that, you see the loyalty to the institution in a way that is also quite unique. That puts the research agenda of Texas A&M far and above. It's most interesting. But at any rate, I decided after I got my doctorate there that I was going to follow Earl wherever he went for his job, because he was born on a dairy farm and has always been in agriculture, and then got his doctorate in the field of agriculture, blueberries, tree fruits. It's wonderful, of course, for Oregon's agriculture. And so he got a job in California in the CSU system. Little did we know at that time that we would remain in that system for 32 years, as we did. But that is where I then began serving as Dean of the College of Education there. And it's all of that work with the business community that is what I wish now to apply in the congressional sector. And the reason is I see that it's needed. I see that people who really have a feel for business, and every type of business that I've worked with, whether it's a startup business, and I still counsel to this day, yesterday with a couple of startup enterprises, or if it's with corporations that are feeling themselves to be maybe a bit stodgy and less innovative and entrepreneurial than they had been. And they need to regain that kind of a spirit again. So working with them and preparing students and managers that we would educate to interface with that community has been my life. And that is a job that put me in touch with the economic indicators that have worried me tremendously of the things that we see now. And here's the problem. The Congress people that we have representing us in Washington now that are voting for that liberal agenda and for more stimulus and for bigger government and for more spending that we can't afford, it's that very agenda that is making those economic indicators become worse and worse. And that is the major, major concern. Because if we continue down this path, it's not going to be a good picture, because it would interfere with the wonderful vision that we have for America. And that's the vision that must remain intact. That vision that we have for liberty and for individual liberty. And that vision that we have that our country is passed on to the generations that follow us in better and better shape, certainly in better shape than it is right now. So that need to get back on track with representatives who know how to get along, are not dysfunctional, and can get us away from the path that we're on now. So that's really the background that led me to want to run for Congress, and that led me to want to apply what I've learned in and about the business sector to what's going on in Congress. So that's a little bit about my background. One more thing about why I decided to run. Really always had it in the back of my mind, particularly since working in a couple of different governor's offices, back in Kansas and then another one in Texas. Because I saw from those two gentlemen, both of them were of the mind to serve. One was Republican, one was Democrat, by the way. And they had that mind to serve. And it was a wonderful platform for them to really be able to serve. And I thought, I like that very much. And I would like to have a similar kind of platform to be able to serve the district that we represent. It's a big district, going from Salem and east to Tillamook and down the coast a ways. It's a very diverse district. Urban, forest, fisher, all of the diversity of Oregon, I think, is represented right here. And that's really, I think, one of the major joys of being in CD5, is that we're not just of one kind, with one set of concerns that we have. It's truly all over the map, so that's a bit of the exciting part. So I wanted to serve. I saw that opportunity in public office to be able to serve, but it wasn't the right time for me. With kids at home, I know some people miraculously manage to combine all of that with their service, but that was not me. So I said, I've got to wait until the time is right in my life. And this is that time. I have my children, they're adults, a little older than 22, the youngest is 23, but they're out and about. And it's a great time for me to be able to spend half of my life in Washington, D.C. and the other half on the airplane going back and forth. Because that is a certain lifestyle that is indeed very different. Some of our congressmen end up with a home back there. We would not be able to. Our home would remain right where it is in Oregon in the 5th District, because that is the base from which I would want to serve. So that's a little bit more about why I've decided to run. So my message is always around the subject of wake up America. Wake up America. Look at the directions that we are currently headed. And they are not the direction for prosperity. It's just not going the right way right now. We need people of courage and of integrity and of transparency, the kind of person that looks you in the eye and says, this is what I think. I know you may not like that aspect, but I think you're going to like the rest of what I stand for. And they do what they say they're going to do. And they're open about it, clear about it, and if they don't know yet what they think, they'll tell you that too. Because that can certainly be the case as new issues come around all of the time. And new bills that are so incredibly complex. I'll share one of those with you in just a moment. In complex, hundreds and hundreds of pages, and I don't follow Nancy Pelosi's recommendation that we vote now and read it tomorrow. That isn't a good fit, is it? So if we're going to know what we're voting on in depth and understand it, We've got to be able to say honestly sometimes, I need to do a little more research on that. But again, the point is, don't bluff, don't play games, be transparent, you know? And so that's where I come from. And all of that is a part of keeping liberty within our reach. Whether it's liberty that was defined by the Constitution, individual liberty as we talk about it today, that's really the litmus test that I try to give to any sort of legislation. So if you say, well, what is the basis upon which you would evaluate what comes before you? Yes, it is the Constitution, it is liberty. And so that would be the way I look at things. But we've got to align our vision with our action. And we're not quite doing that right now, although part of our Congress is certainly giving it a try. It is not being fulfilled now. So having that increased Republican representation in Congress, that's going to be what gets us on the pathway. And as I tell Greg Walden, hey man, you need some company from Oregon. And he is really, really agreeing with that. And I think we need to be very careful about false leadership. False leadership is what I define as those people who have a love of big government, and they'll vote for trillions more dollars of our debt in order to fund that big government and fund that stimulus and keep on the spending track that we're on, and maybe while we're at it, continue to increase taxes too. Why not? That's what our incumbent voted for just the other day, as a matter of fact. It's really about doing the right thing. I recently, last year in 2011, wrote a textbook on the subject of leadership for businesses. And in that textbook, a big part of it, it was at the beginning, it's all about having that vision and then doing the right thing toward that vision. It's not about just saying the right words, it's about doing the right thing. And I would hope that at the end of my 2-year term that you would judge me by the results that I've achieved for liberty and for jobs and for results, and results of the type that we define relative to that vision. So that's what I see that could lie ahead that would be so exciting. If on the way out you would pick up one of my little palm cards that's back there, or if you don't mind, maybe you're okay, just pass it out right now. Whatever works.
Which one's these?
Yeah, or don't get busy. Thank you so much.
I need some exercise.
Somebody over there.
Did I keep it on him?
At any rate, I itemized there on the front are the main bullet points of the things that I stand for. And those items are the main items that you would hear me talking about most of the time. I'd like to talk just a moment about limited government right now. And I'll start by telling you a story about my husband and me. We bought a home that was built in 1915 in the first edition of Lake Oswego. If any of you are familiar with that first edition, most of the homes go back to that period. Not all of it, most of them do. And this home we felt was homey. It wasn't a grand place at all, but it was homey. It was also kind of falling down. I'm not sure how that fits with homey, but for us it did. Maybe because that home in Kansas where I grew up, the home that my father had built, had warm oak wooden floors. And this place did too, and I liked that a lot. And it just had a good feel about it. We bought it knowing that we would have to remodel the whole thing in a 3-year well, we didn't know at the time it was going to be a 3-year money pit, but it was a 3-year project. And we decided to start with the foundation. They had moved this home back in the 60s from where it stood to about 3 blocks away. Commercial property was going to be built up there. They moved it about 3 blocks away to where they dug a basement and put this house on top of it. Now, how they did that in the early 1960s, I would have frankly liked to have seen, because it must have been quite a labor project, because it's a 2-story house. But anyway, when the house was put there, there were the aftermath effects that you could see. A lot of the plaster, lab and plaster, was cracked, and the house swayed a little bit, and some of the floors would entertain a ball that you were trying to run across the floor, because it would just really go all over the place. So Earl and I said, first thing we've got to do is make sure the foundation is secure and prop up this house. And we ended up working on this for several months, didn't we, Earl? And put in posts, 11 of them, just to, and the top floor had to match the bottom floor, just to make that place stand up well. Well, you know, there's something that we've all read about building on a foundation of rock, not on sand. That's, by analogy, what we were really trying to do. And I feel that the same lesson applies to our government. We've got to have that foundation that is solid, that is rock solid. Do we have that now? I see these shifting ways of interpretation by the executive or Congress going off too deep in some direction that they're headed. All of that big government, that regulation, is not the solid foundation of the Constitution. And I see that our Constitution is, in fact, that bed of rock on which we need to be building. I brought with me just one example of something that just boggles my mind, frankly. Healthcare. Why is it that this mess is in the courts, is in the Supreme Court right now? It's not because of just any little provision in it, right? It's because the executive thought that it was proper to embed in his Affordable Care Act, the names are incredible. Who thought of that? An individual mandate that would require individuals, you and me, to buy certain insurance, right? What kind of policy like that would lead to Supreme Court questioning? Well, if the government can do that, if the executive can propose that and Congress vote on that, what's to say, the Supreme Court justice has said, that they won't tell us what broccoli to buy? You've heard them talk about this, right? Or what else we have to purchase. Is that the bed of rock that we should be building on? I don't think at all, because that's the kind of bed that is one of shifting sands. What's the executive going to tell us to do next? What is the Congress going to tell us as individuals to do next that will violate our own liberty, our individual liberty? What are they going to do next? That's the shifting sand that I'm talking about. That's the part that's so bothersome. Try to read the Affordable Care Act. Just try. They have made it online very, very confusing for the average person to be able to track it. Just try. You'll find that you're reading some that didn't pass. You're going to find you're reading some that have been amended, and it's not labeled in such a way that you can really tell. So as soon as a group of people try to analyze what's in there, they're going to be told, whoop, you're wrong, it's changed. Oh, really? To what? It's very, very difficult to track what is current in those 900 pages plus that the judges are really looking at. But anyway, we try, right? We try. I picked up just one page of several of them, and this one is in the section that is talking about how our insurance rates that we have to pay for are prescribed. And it's fascinating. It's got a lot of bullets that describe here how those rates are going to be determined. One of them, for example, is in tobacco use, which can be considered in the determination of our rates, except that such rate shall not vary by more than 1.5 to 1. Oh, okay, so Is that free enterprise or is that the tobacco lobby speaking? Which is it? Who's talking there? Those rates are predetermined. It was predetermined in the bills that came out of Congress in Obamacare. Well, and then it goes on. There's a lot of stuff. Well, and then let's say that a state proposes what their rates are going to be, but that the secretary reviews them, which is prescribed here, and then establishes each state under all of these subparagraphs, and they're all outlined. Man, is it complicated. And then, if the secretary determines that the rating areas of the state are not in accord with all of this, oh, no problem, the secretary then sets them. It is intrusion by the federal government over and into and on top of our medical care in ways that are absolutely amazing, absolutely intrusive. Is that built on a solid foundation? Well, what happens when the federal government realizes that it's run out of money? Then how is it again that our medical care is going to be provided, or is it? Or is it just that they're going to change the law so that our required insurance rates will go up? We probably won't be able to opt out of it unless we meet the requirements of the law. It just goes on and on and on. And it's very, very much of concern when we think about health care that is so important to us and how that would be managed by the federal government. That is not the secure future that I know I have in mind for my children. And it's probably not what any of us have in mind for security of our children's health care. And as they grow older and they have kids, it's really very much big government in action, like we've never seen before. So, well, of course, the Supreme Court may just say that won't stand anyway, and then we'll be in a very different state. But we're going to rely on the Congress that is in place now in order to come up with something better. I have concerns about that too, and that's another reason why I'm running. Encouraging a vibrant, free enterprise economy where our industries are encouraged to compete and grow and prosper, all of that is very much a part of the higher standard of living that can be regained. How can we make this kind of health care provision not where the government is controlling the doctors and the hospitals' fees and rates according to this prescribed and this prescribed, where the goal is greater efficiency in our medical care program? Maybe that's not what all of us want to prescribe to. And that's the point, is to get us to a place where we can have flexibility as we have now in choosing our providers, not all of whom are focused on getting as many people through that day that we visit them according to a simple prescribed fee and formula. Well, there aren't any barriers to what we can accomplish unless we put them there. We're putting them there, and we need not to do that. So why am I qualified to put on the brakes in this kind of a system? Or in fact, in any of the other ways where we see free enterprise being limited and individual liberties being limited. We've got a background that speaks to these very issues. I want to apply it in this sector. I don't have confidence in our current system of voters in Congress that they are accomplishing it. We see the results that have been achieved with the vote from our incumbent in Congress from CD5, who voted for the Affordable Care Act. I'm trying to give it a little bit of dignity, is not the word, but Obamacare. That's what we're talking about. So, that's a little bit more about me. And I'd like to understand from you some of the issues that you would like to see focused on that are particularly applicable here. And I just want to share with you, I've had the same conversations in every county. And in every county, someone said, for us, it's about federal regulations, overlapping federal regulations, jurisdictions that are so confusing, we don't know what we're doing. We don't even know where we can fish, or where we can forest, or where we can do this. How about Marion County? What are the issues that are most of concern to you? All of that, by the way, feeds into jobs, right? So.
I'm not going to answer the question specifically on Marion County, but maybe you can kind of explain how you compare the Ryan budget with the, I was going to say the budget on the other side, but they don't have a budget, do they? So speak about the Ryan budget, if you will. That seems to be such a terrible thing, according to some.
Paul Ryan is an innovator, right? He is trying very, very hard to make a difference. And he's the kind of person that, frankly, I'd like to be a part of a team of people who work with him to try to get his points of view forward. One of the things that he does not believe in is decreasing spending while raising taxes in order to be able to keep all of the programs at the same level that we have them now. So in his budget, what we see is the cutting of administrative costs for many of the programs that are being delivered. And I support that. I think that's the way to go. I understand, for instance, in Social Security that a hefty third, almost, of the delivery cost is buried in administrative cost. That control of that kind of thing is the way to cut. We don't see the same level of defense cutting that others have proposed and talked about, although, as you rightly say, it's not in any budget per se yet on the other side. But many have been talking about defense spending being cut. If Paul Ryan were to do that, it would be, again, with administrative focus on it, rather than affecting the soldiers in a field. Even though Paul Ryan would be the first to say that we would want, if there are soldiers in a field, we would want to see that occurring anyway because of congressional action, not because of executive fiat. So there's a lot about it that I haven't had the opportunity to really go in depth on yet. Intuitively, I know that in the past I have supported his wonderful videos on, or the content of the video material that he had on Social Security. And I would look forward to the opportunity to talking with him about how he has embedded that into his budget. One of the most infuriating aspects of Social Security today being that this is the first year where we have run into actual negative revenue on the whole Social Security area. And that's because of a lot of things of our demographics, our situation relative to the jobs and all of that. But the thing that infuriates him, and it does me as well, is how the trust funds from Social Security have just been spent on anything that the Congress wanted to spend it on other than Social Security. So the eventual return of those monies where they belong in the trust fund sounds so secure, but in the hands of our current legislators, it is not. It is spent willy-nilly to add more to the $16 trillion debt. I can't even still fathom trillion, but there we are with and the other thing that I've heard Paul Ryan talk about is how now our individual debt, so to speak, is over $600,000. And talk about an invasion to personal liberty. We are the collateral for that debt of our government, because it's not that there is money for it. It is that it's just being cranked out from the money machine for it. So anyway, there are the key elements, like I've described, that I see in his plan. So ask me back in 10, 15 days and I'll be able to talk about more of the detail.
I'll hold you to that.
Because I think it's the kind of thing that needs to get out there so that there is, I hope eventually, a point, counterpoint. Because we can't go on for so long without budgets.
It's really small peanuts, but, you know, the fact that the Congress people have one set of retirement and healthcare,
Yeah.
and the rest of us are supposed to be doing something else, is that something you would be interested in tying what the legislators do to what the everyday American gets?
No
It's like
wonder.
saying it's small peanuts, but it's a little bit, you know.
Yeah, I totally am there. And then there was a proposal, too, that until Congress passes the budget, as long as they are late in passing it, that they wouldn't get any pay.
That'd be awesome.
I think so too. I as soon as that,
All of us who don't work don't get paid.
yeah, duh. I like that sort of thinking because it's about accountability.
It
And
is.
that's what we've been missing, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely, just like they passed the, you know, so you couldn't do the insider trading. And apparently they watered that bill down. There were a couple issues that they took off. So Congress couldn't use, you know, the information that they get to invest in the stocks. That one just passed, so, which is good, accountability.
Yeah. And if we don't have that, say for instance on the Social Security, how would there be real understanding?
Oh,
Yeah. Because as long as they can choose and we can't. And, I'll stop. It just is enough to get your
yeah, it is, very fascinating.
feelings going.
I apologize for coming in late, but did you explain why you moved from California to here?
Because this is where we want to be. And always have.
And why is that?
Well, there are a lot of reasons. My husband and I are people who set criteria for where we want to live.
Okay.
One was we wanted to rejoin our kids. They're Oregon kids, and they love it, we love it. Another one is that we wanted to be in a place that had a climate that was favorable. I don't know if you can see it from there, but all of these little cancerous spots, I had gone already to the end of my nose, and they'd all be, I'm tired of that sun, we needed rain. And when I tell our friends here that, no, I don't particularly need an umbrella, and they laugh at me, but we do enjoy the climate very much. We wanted the lifestyle of Oregonians. I don't know if you've ever been driving lately in California on the freeways. It's not a good experience. I felt so little when I would be driving for any appointment like this one, you know, any place where I had to go a few miles, and I'd be surrounded by the big rigs. Surrounded by them. You know, one on each side on a 5-lane highway, maybe 4-lane. You just feel tiny when you're enveloped by them. Worked hard with the ports down there to try to increase exports, but what that meant was more big rigs. Because there wasn't a good alternative transportation system. I had a transportation program under my work at in the dean's office, but it was there's just a long ways to go, even with the help of the congressman from there. One was head of appropriations. A lot more reasons as far as lifestyle. This is one of the states where, I don't know if you even notice out on the roads how nice people are as drivers most of the time, but you notice it if you're in another state. Even back in Kansas where I was reared, if someone wants in and they put on their blinker and they look back helplessly, forget it, they're gonna speed up on the other side of you. It's different, it's different. It's a more of a people-oriented culture here that that we love. We love. This is the lifestyle. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that helps. How long have you been here?
We bought our property, we've already been through this. We bought our property 3 years ago and started remodeling it. And then we moved here when I could afford to leave my job. I've been a working girl my whole life and had to continue working, and we've heard a little bit about jobs in Oregon, and my job was elsewhere, and I had to follow through with it in order to be able to come here. So, yes.
How about campaign money? I think the current representative has a pretty good war chest, financed by probably not Oregonians. So how are you going to counteract that if you get the nomination?
Well, I won't be asking Nancy Pelosi for money. That's something that he has.
I think if she would.
I think that she might have a little bit of indebtedness there. If you call up on the Elections Commission where his money is from, it's pretty interesting. You know, it's just a matter of, I'll give you an envelope anytime. Because that's how it works, and it truly is the small contributions that can make a big difference. And we saw that in President Obama's first campaign, didn't we? Where the small contributions of $10, $15, $20 made a huge difference for him. But it does take the bigger money too, and that would have to come from some PACs. But I think the focus on that is rightly after the primary. That's my feeling. I'd rather be doing today what I'm doing today.
But Rob didn't get any help, did he, from the National Committee when he was running the first district?
Yeah, he got $40,000 from,
That doesn't go very far.
I know it doesn't go very far, but he did get that.
He was thrown under the bus, in my opinion. That's why I don't give to the National Committee.
He did get person help too, but who knows how much that helps. They're not people who necessarily understand Oregon. Who knows?
The current representative we have characterizes government as helping people succeed. And he characterizes Republicans as individuals who are causing people to struggle at the expense of the rich. How would you respond to that?
It's a fundamental difference in how we see the role of government. And I think we need to look back to those fundamentals. What is the role of big government? Is it to feed us and to clothe us and to take away our desire to work hard, to succeed, to innovate? And I say, no, that's not the role of government. If it gives us everything, then it will also take everything. If we have, and I always say, you know, I'm not in that top 1%, I'm in the 100%. And I feel that I'm there when you're talking about the, you know, the wealthy. I feel that I'm in that 100% group because of the upbringing that I've had, because of the values that I've had. I know what it's like to work hard because I've done it my whole life. Earl knows that after the girls were in bed, I'd stay up eating chocolate chips, working until 1:30 or 2:30 in the morning. That's an investment in time and labor to be in the middle class in this country. And I think that investment of time is something that I wouldn't want the government to take my spirit away from me. And it happens to all of us if we are given everything from the government. But it, like Thatcher said, what do you do when you run out of the people to tax? What do you do? How is that form of government sustained? And it isn't. And that's one of the things that is of concern with Medicare. And that you raise is really very hard. Probably all of us in this room have some friends who just see the world differently than we do. Do you?
Oh, yeah.
And it's a very difficult conversation.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that healthcare bill. When I read it, and I did read it, it was like an outline, and to be determined later, or it referenced some other document that you don't have, you know, and not one document, but many, many documents. you know, and they just left it open so they can come back and fill in the blanks with whatever they want to put in there. You know, it's really a disgusting piece of whatever.
You know, I've worked with young people my whole life, and I'd love to see young people involved more and more with the Republican Party. Because otherwise what we see is when they transition to a job where they're able to work and bring home money, and they see how much disappears in taxes, they say, why am I working so hard? Well, let me talk to you about that. And what do the teachers say in their classroom to answer that question? I'm concerned about that. And then you.
With your last couple of answers.
Speak up.
With your last couple of answers, can you tell me your feeling on a simple word called compromise? What do you feel about it, and how far are you willing to go to quote unquote get ahead? And do you feel the absolute urgency to get ahead requiring compromise?
When I taught negotiation, which I used to do, I would start out asking the class that similar question. And invariably, some in the class would say, you know, I support needing to compromise in order to get any resolution to whatever the situation was. And I would say, well, let's look at it a little bit differently. Let's look at it as to what your goal is and what your goal is, and see if we can find any common ground. And I would give them a case study that was complex enough so that out of it, they would find out that when they learned what the other person really wanted or needed, they would be able to find a common ground. That doesn't involve compromise. That involves incrementally moving forward to our vision on those areas on which we agree. It takes a lot of communication, though. And I'm afraid that that's something that we don't see enough of in this day and age. So I'm not about compromise. I'm about moving forward on the areas where we do agree when I'm consistent to the values that you see on my little card here. Does that, am I wording it in such a way that that makes sense?
Possibly. How much of, if the other guy's goals that we're having trouble on in the area that we're coming up on a compromise, or coming up on trying to work toward a common goal, are you willing to accept that they're not compatible with your goals?
If it violates the Constitution, if it violates individual liberty, no compromise whatsoever. Okay?
Apple loss.
Pardon?
It's apple loss.
If we, though, don't take the elephant, but take the smaller part, I would bet that we can find areas on which we agree and be able to move forward incrementally to our ultimate vision anyway. But what I see happening now is we say, oh, well, we'll just vote for a stimulus package here in order to get us through this next year. That is so bad because of the long-term effects that it has. That kind of thing, that's not a compromise. That is violating the liberty and the ultimate goal that we need to be moving toward. So I don't compromise on that basic.
There's a difference between the states on some important matters. We were at the Supreme Court last week because a little less than half the states said no to the Affordable Health Act, let's be polite, and got the thing into the court. In Oregon, we saw our party go right along with the party of the public unions. That's who our opponents are. So public unions, they're not the traditional Democrats that just wanted to help people. And in some states we've seen right to work become the law. And we're a long ways from it here. We've got serious problems here. The problems here are because compromise didn't involve checking in with your goals first. I guess I'm just more of a discussion than a question. But how do you teach a state that has gone so far and has compromised its values and principles as much as has happened in this state? How do you turn that around?
We gotta elect the right state representatives and state senators, and by golly, with the 50-50 ratio that we had this year in the state house, I thought that we're getting that way. Let's get 31 this year, right? Let's get that over that 50%.
We endorsed the affordable health care, and we set Oregon up to just fall, just get on the bus with everybody else when and if. And on the education reform, I don't know if you've seen what my grandkids are going to be taught if they don't get homeschooled, but it's a stark contrast between what the states do and Oregon is not a pretty picture compared to the ones that have shown the courage.
Yeah, I spent last evening with Representative Kennemer, and we had that very discussion. And it's something where we just need to keep working on those numbers, I think, because the persuasion becomes easier when the numbers are greater, right?
That's right. Yeah, people need, they need one person to lead, and then maybe there'll be 3, and then maybe there'll be 100 later on.
Yeah. I'm conscious of your time. That's what. Are we on the same page?
Thank you.
And I just wanted to mention, as Oregon spokesperson for, I started to say what you just said about right to work for the death tax phase out.
Yeah.
If you have any groups that would like to hear about that at any time, I'd be delighted to come and discuss that with you.
Okay.
So, thank you.